Now, time for our My 70s guest this afternoon. And the 1970s could well have sounded a little bit different if Jim Lee hadn't picked up a musical instrument. As a bassist, backing vocalist and multi-instrumentalist in Slade in the 70s, Jim Lee co-wrote many of the songs that provided a soundtrack to teenage life in the UK during the 70s. With 6 UK number 1 hits and 17 consecutive top 20 entries, Slade remained as one of the most successful and beloved bands of the decade. As a 16-year-old in the 1960s, Jim auditioned for a band called the Inbetweens, which formed the foundations of Slade. He's now put the Inbetweens back together, recording with them again. I spoke to Jim before the show, and his first choice of music was this from Paul McCartney and Wings. That's Paul McCartney in Wings and Jet, and that's a favourite record of our guest this afternoon on Sounds of the 70s, the one and only Jim Lee. A very good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Johnny.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay-ish.
I still detect the Midlands accent there. Were you Birmingham or Wolverhampton?
Wolverhampton.
Yeah. Now, listen, you're the one in Slade that had a good education in music. You got first-class honours at London Music School practical exam. What were you playing then? Was that piano or guitar?
No, violin.
Violin? So how many instruments can you play?
I don't know. Just give it to me and I'll do it. I don't blow and I don't bang.
Right.
So no drumming and no saxophones.
Now, the beginnings of Slade was in the late 60s when they were called Ambrose Slade. And then you got spotted by Chas Chandler. Where did you see you guys playing?
Bag of Nails in London.
In Kingsley Street, next to Carnaby Street. Yeah, that was a great club. Had many a good night down there.
Yeah, he came down there and Chas came down to see us. He was asked to come down and have a gander at us by Jack Baverstock, who was the head of Fontana Records. And we were just playing and I thought, well, he's not going to come. There were just a few people having a bit of a dance around and God knows what. But, we were always very loud, and so anybody who came to see us had to get earplugs. The last time I spoke to Chas, actually, I asked him why he signed us, and he said, well, at first, I thought it was all commonplace. He said, but then he was looking at the band, and he looked at Dave, and he said, well, he'd make a nice little pop star. Well, of course, the Monkees were going round at that time. Then he said, I was looking at Nod, and he said, and I thought he stood like John Lennon. He said, so I like that, because he was a big mate of John Lennon, Chas was. And then he was looking at Don, and he said, he knows what he's doing. And then he looked at me, and he said, he's the bloke who's making it all happen. After all those years.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So it was Chas who did a couple of good things. He got you to change the name from Ambrose Slade to Slade. He signed you with Fontana Records. And then the other good thing for a manager to do, he encouraged you and Noddy to do songwriting.
Yeah.
That's where the money is over the years.
Yes, it is. Who told you that?
Well, let's play one of your early compositions. It's called How Does It Feel? Where did you write this one?
It was when I was at school. I would have been about 13 and a half, something like that. But we had this old piano in our house and it got in the way. And so it was put outside in a veranda, which was leaking. When I came home from school, I would just tat about on it. And a lot of the notes were broken. That dum, 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 dum. That's where that came from.
So that's Slade and How Does It Feel, written by Jim Lee. And was Noddy involved in the writing of that one or not, just you?
Well, because it had been hanging around since I was 13, Nod did the lyrics. I came up with that was it. How does it feel? Those words.
Right.
And then Nod filled in the rest.
Then the other thing that Chas did was give you a strong visual image. Were you okay with that?
Are you knocking spinners, mate? Spinners.
Well, he wore some pretty outrageous clothes.
Yeah, I think that was Dave. That was that bloke Dave that kept doing that. But, you know, it was... it all worked.
Now then, Slade are on Top of the Pops, and you become really famous. You have loads of hits. What was the best thing about all of that for you?
Well, for me, I always had to have the next song ready, and Chas would always ring up. All right, Jimmy, he said, how's the writing going? and stuff. So it was, you know, then I'd come up with the tune, and I'd go over to Nods, and I'd always have lyrics as well. And I'd go over to Nods, and he'd finish it off for me.
Well, let's play 'Cause I Love You. That's Slade and 'Cause I Love You, and with the band, the songwriter, bass player and producer, Jim Lee, is our guest here on Sounds of the 70s. Now, tell me about this group called the Dummies. When did they come along?
It was when we had our sort of depressed time, like sort of 1976, 7, something like that. My brother was working with Chas. We started a record company called Cheapskate, and it was near Christmas when we released the first thing. Paul Burnett was on Radio 1 then, and he gave us a Record of the Week, and he held it over into the next week as well. So Frank rang Rough Trade. Frank played the track down the phone. He went back to the phone, and he said, whoever was on the other end of the phone said, "It sounds like Slade."
Are you talking about When the Lights Are Out?
Ah, yeah, you had me on here. You knew about this all the time, didn't you?
Well, do our little bit of research on this show. That's the one song you wished had come out as a single from Slade. It's on the album Old, New, Borrowed and Blue. If we play it, should we play Slade or the Dummies version?
Slade, I think. We have more time with Slade.
That's Slade, and a song called When the Lights Are Out, and was never a single, Jim Lee, you thought it should have been. So, Jim, what's all this about you putting the Inbetweens back together?
When I joined the Inbetweens started disbanding. So just once again through Frank, he met up with a couple of the original members. So I thought, well, what about doing just for the fans, you know? Train kept a rolling.
Jim, good luck with the Inbetweens.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us this afternoon. All the best.
Cheers, Johnny. Great to talk to you.
Cheers, mate.